You're not required to blow out all the walls and start living a completely open plan life when you remodel your house. But at the same time, skipping your chance to rearrange how your house flows and connects is a huge missed opportunity. Does that sound like a paradox? It's not. There's a middle ground, and the right answers for you and for your house lie at the heart of it. Let's set the stage here. Great flow within a house and flow between inside and outside of a house is a hallmark of great mid-century design. That great flow, that connection, is a concept I bake into every remodel I plan for my one-to-one clients and what I teach to my students as well. It's one of the 4 cornerstones of great mid-mod updates. The mid-century era was a time of casual living, family-oriented spaces. This really resonates with us today. It's very similar to the way we like to live in our houses now, with some caveats. But even with that concept of open, flowing mid-century design being at the core of the mid-century idea, many more modest or traditional or build-a-grade mid-century houses were still more divided up into a bunch of separated rooms. Where your house falls on that spectrum, from closed up separate rooms to completely blown out open plan, probably depends on geography, on the economics of the original builder, and on what's happened to the house over the intervening years. The real question is, how much does its open or closedness work for you? There are 3, and more, obvious reasons why open plan designs, even though they are beautiful magazine quality, show up in the movies, might not work for you at all. And that's okay. You might sometimes want to hide a little bit of clutter in your life. And if so, same. You might have introverts living in your house. And this goes double actually if you have some people in the house being introverts and others as extroverts. You definitely don't want a fully open plan if you're trying to mix those 2 personalities happily. Or maybe you just don't like it. That's okay too. You don't want everything you do to be on display to the street. That is perfectly acceptable. You're not required to want an open plan house. I'm going to cover a little bit of history, how the mid-century era became the open plan years. It has to do with social structure and also with structure. And then I'm going to give you some suggestions for how you can personalize your house, either bringing more privacy and separate spaces to a house that's too open plan, or how to carefully open up your flow so that your house works as well as you'd like it to without getting to that place of fully open plan. Open plan and open storage can go hand in hand in how people feel about wanting their lives to be visible to themselves. This is one of the first questions I ask my clients and to my students when I'm thinking about basic design moves that we're going to make in their creative suggestions. If I'm talking to a household where the people just feel stressed by seeing too many things around them, we are going to look for more separation between spaces. For example, being able to leave the dishes in the kitchen and go into the living room, not see them until you're ready to come back and deal with them at the end of the evening. That's a personality choice which houses need to accommodate. Or just feeling like if you see too many of your objects around you, it's activating, it's lighting up something in your brain, it's never letting you relax. We need to be able to close a door, either a cabinet door or maybe a whole walk-in closet door on some of those spaces so you can get clutter out of sight. For other people, the opposite is true. For some people, they want to see all their objects around them. They want to see some examples of their favorite craft and hobby. They want to see all of the tools in the kitchen easily, perhaps neatly displayed, maybe not even that neatly displayed, so that they're cued to remember the things that they have around them, the things they like to use in their life, the things that they like to do in their downtime. This is a personality choice, not a right or wrong answer. So knowing how you and how the other members of your household feel about this is going to be really determinative in how you make your choices going forward through your remodel planning. At the end of the day, if you're a person who does not like to see clutter but does generate some clutter, you're not going to want a fully open plan layout. The next reason that most people are uncomfortable with a fully open plan layout is personality types inside the house, communication, energy styles. If you are an introvert, you're probably going to want some places that you can go and be apart from other people in your home. One of the main exceptions to this actually is a family or a household of entirely made up of introverts, and sometimes in that case, a bunch of people like to sit quietly in the same room together, being near each other but not hearing or talking to each other, just in each other's line of sight, and that can feel like a really collaborative, pleasant way to spend a Saturday morning or a weekday evening. If that's you, a more open plan social space might work nicely. If you've got a bunch of people in a house and some or one of them is an introvert, you're going to want some space for that person to go away and get their alone time. And if you've got extroverts who are socializing loudly in one part of the house, you're going to want to think about, is there a place where, without going away to your own room, it's possible to be in the social part of the house without being right in the middle of the mix? Creating space for an introvert to be happy in a relatively open plan place might look like having a little nook or alcove off the side of a shared space, or it might be a concept that Sarah Susanka named the away room, which is a public space, not a private room, that has usually some visual connection to the social spaces of the house, but can be closed up with doors, which might be left open sometimes and closed at other times, that creates a sound private area. This can be used for one of two reasons. You can either have a quiet person go and hang out in the away room while people are doing loud group activities in the rest of the house, or while quiet things are happening in the main part of the house, one person can go away, or two people can go away, and watch a sports game, or play video games, or listen to something loud in the away room. In either case, it allows that separation, so people can be happy without having to leave the house or leave the social areas, and yet still all get their own sound and privacy levels satisfied. And it's also fine to just not appreciate a full open plan layout. And if that's not for you, that's perfectly all right. You're not required to have a house that's more open plan than you would like it to be. The mid-century era brought in the concept of open plans because we were making changes both, as I say, in our social structures. It was no longer common to have domestic staff in a middle-class household, so we weren't trying to create a space where a servant could have a little privacy, and B, you could pretend a servant wasn't there getting things done. The people who were doing the work of the household labor were, well, it was usually one person. It was usually the mom of the household. And we've talked about how the patriarchy set up our mid-century kitchens for us in another video. If you're curious about that, go check it out. I have a lot to say on the subject. But in general, we had more egalitarian layouts of mid-century homes. We also had a structural change. In the history going up until this time, each part of the house was basically supported by all of the different wall components of the house. In a stick frame, like Midwestern mid-century ranch, the roof is supported on the outer two walls of the house. There is a joist that runs across, which may actually be two separate pieces of wood with a joint connection at the middle that's resting on the center line of walls in the house. But on the other hand, all the lines that sort of divide up that long length of the house underneath the long gable roof probably have no structural bearing whatsoever. But in the mid-century era, we have a new building technique, post and beam style homes, which are exactly what they sound like, a series of columns holding up beams which hold up or are the roof. And this means the walls inside are no longer in any way necessary to supporting the house. They're only existing for privacy and separation. And architects in this era started to play a lot of games with maybe having only a privacy wall that went up just yay high above the eye line and then open space above it, or being able to have flexible divider walls, even folding screen walls that could designate a guest room into an office, into a den that was part of the social part of the house, depending on use and preference. So in that new building technology, we get a new house style, and that house style informs the ethos, the spirit of the age, a little bit more connection between spaces. Even for a house that was originally built as a stick frame house, it's possible to go in and add beams, add structure that's sometimes even pocketed up into the ceiling so it becomes invisible. And contractors who have the engineering know-how to do this, or will hire an engineer to size a beam for them, will often try to please their clients with a dramatic change by saying, we could blow out all of the walls in this social area and make it one big open plan square. How would you like that? Some people take them up on this, other people immediately look at that and know it's not for them, and some people find themselves in an uncanny middle ground of having allowed the most of their structure in a social space to be blown out and then feeling like it's not quite right. It's a little too roomy, it's a little too echoey, it feels like maybe the ceiling has now pancaked too low because it's proportionately off for the rooms. If any of those things are the case, we're going to talk about some design solutions for that in a moment. First, though, let's talk about what to do if you have a relatively divided up house, a classic builder-grade mid-century ranch in the Midwest. Most of the rooms are rooms, even though you might have perhaps a dining nook connected to a living room. That might be your only open plan element. Planning a mid-century remodel is the perfect opportunity. In fact, I think it would be a huge missed opportunity and mistake not to think about if there are any places where you could create better flow within and around your mid-century house at this time. Just replacing one finished material with another, putting kitchen cabinets back exactly where they had been, doesn't address the way that maybe instead of one household matron preparing all of the meals and delivering them to the family, you have two adults who would like to collaborate on cooking. That means you should be thinking about a change to your kitchen layout. Maybe you're trying to keep a better eye or have a better conversational flow on what's happening between the living room and the kitchen throughout the course of the evening, so you can have chat while food is being prepared and keep an eye on homework time. That might require removing or at least puncturing parts of the wall that separates those two spaces. You might also want to think about having a better connection to outside, moving or opening up passageways and walls, widening doorways, closing off doorways that aren't necessary, and creating better flow and resting areas throughout the house is a huge opportunity that can sometimes cost you nothing extra in a remodel, and certainly is always worth considering and workshopping in the design phase before you lock in on the costs and finishing of construction. If you're trying to make better flow without breaking the bank or structurally remodifying the entire house, you're going to make small changes. For example, just removing a door from an interior doorway could improve the flow. Cutting in interior windows without actually even having to remove a whole wall, or removing a wall and rather than just dropping a column in the middle of it, allowing a screen wall that starts to form structure to come across part of the room, so you've got a visual connection in some space and a walk-through connection in another. Putting those pieces together can create the right kind of openness and flow without feeling like you've completely exposed all of the rooms in the house to each other. You might also think about high window or opening connections between spaces. Rather than connections that happen at eye level, you might think about a connection that shares light across a space up above the 5-foot or 6-foot line, a clear story line of windows, or possibly elevating even your interior ceiling height a little bit, and then letting there be a little bit of a light share over a wall between two spaces. Thinking about, as you move from one space to another, what's going to move you? What's going to invite you into that space? Are you walking towards a piece of art hanging on a wall? Are you walking towards the light dropping down from a sun tube? Are you walking towards a window? Is there a built-in element of upholstery that's going to make you look for a comfortable place to go sit with a cup of coffee? Thinking about what you can see as you move along the plan. Sometimes you can do this by staying in your house and imagine you have x-ray vision. Sometimes you can do it by just looking at a floor plan and drawing straight lines radiating out from an important spot. That's going to give you the opportunities you need to create better flow through the house. Now, if you have the opposite problem, a gut remodel project because you're dealing with mold remediation or major structural failures, or just because you're making a lot of changes, or if someone else has already come in and blown out the layout of a mid-century house and what it ends up feeling like is too open, too sterile, too completely in view of itself, now you're going to start to play around with mid-century screening elements to bring corners, connections, pockets of space back into a big open area. This reminds me of a conversation I had on a consult call recently where a fellow came to me because he was working with a local design build contractor who was telling him how it was possible structurally to completely blow open the core of the house, which had been a kitchen, an eat-in area, a dining room, and a living room, 4 adjacent rooms, into one big square room. He'd seen a couple of computer renderings of the space, and he could tell it was uncomfortable, uncanny, too connected to itself, and undifferentiated. He couldn't figure out how to furnish the space. He couldn't figure out where a table could go, where a TV arrangement could go, how to relate to the sliding doors and picture window at the start of the house. What was the dividing space around the hearth? None of it seemed to make sense anymore without those walls. What I ended up suggesting to him was that we could certainly remove a lot of that separating structure. Each of the 4 individual rooms on its own was feeling too small, and they had been redone in a dated style in the 90s. But rather than completely knocking out all of the plus sign of dividing walls, instead we should do a couple of things. One, we should maintain a couple of corners. Being able to furnish into or around a corner is really helpful. Having a little bit of space to define a TV viewing area with a bit of a wing wall on either side, having a little space to surrounding around a hearth, having a place that you can tuck a sofa or a chair into a bookshelf corner. All of these are really useful elements. Humans like to be tucked away to feel protected. We don't like to feel like we're standing alone on the wide savannah. Kind of makes you wonder where the predators are. So even inside your house, you want to maintain corners and little pockets of space. We can also think about where we can have walk-through versus view-through connections. In several places we proposed some built-ins that would effectively create a knee wall separating 2 spaces from each other where you could see over and talk over them, but you couldn't walk through that space. And then also where we could have some screen wall elements, an array of slats, or even just 3 columns in a row that would define a space without completely cutting it off from the rest of the house. In the end, he realized that he could go with his contractor's suggestion partway, but leave a few of those dividing wall elements in place where they were actually going to help him experience and define the different use cases of the different parts of the space. If you're faced with a large new room that feels too open and undifferentiated, think about variety you can add to the flooring material, pockets of space you can create with furnishing, differences you can make in ceiling height, the way you can create space by paneling one wall or a corner where two walls meet, things you can do to bring in defining elements for a space, or go ahead and put back in a little bit of a wall element, at the very least a screen wall. Hopefully this is going to make you feel a little more empowered about making your space more open or closed in plan. But good flow isn't only about the floor plan. Material choices can also connect spaces, sometimes spaces that are adjacent to each other, and sometimes spaces that are out of line of sight from each other through a house. This is why a lot of even modest mid-century houses that have a little bit of a decorative detail on the outside, a knee wall in brick or in stone, will then have the hearth on the inside in the living room finished in that same brick or stone. It's a visual connection between the inside and the outside of the house. Similarly, flooring, if you've got polished concrete on the inside, connecting to a patio concrete on the outside, that makes those two spaces feel more connected. Or if you've got wood floors on the inside, staining an adjacent deck the same tone can help those two spaces feel like one bigger connected space, even if there's a dividing inside-outside wall between them. Even a shape, a pattern of 3 columns at the entry outside, and then 3 columns defining the little entry mudroom area on the inside can make that space feel like it's actually all one psychological area. Yes, this is my callback to the 4 cornerstones of mid-century design, of which flow is only one. You can see that whole video series here, but they are asymmetry in its arrangements, both in floor plan and even things that you put on the wall. They are choosing the right simple shapes, no ornate details, no extra fluted cabinet doors, no crown molding, nothing that's going to say craftsman or Victorian or gingerbread on a mid-century house. And then also letting those simple shapes show off beautiful organic materials, but a proper mix of both the organic natural materials, stone, brick, tile, wood, and the space-age modern materials, glass, plastic, metal, enamel, and more. So if you can get all of those elements going, flow created by layout, but also created by connections in patterns, shapes, and materials, you can plan a mid-century update. Baking improvements in flow into your remodel is going to ensure that you're tailoring the house to actually suit your life, not just replacing the trend of the original era or the 90s remodel you're replacing with whatever's going on right now, but actually helping the house to better suit your life, to be a better container for you and for everyone that shares your household. Don't forget to grab my free guide to the mid-century cornerstones. It'll walk you through all of those steps in greater detail, and it'll let me send you some more helpful information about applying mid-century cornerstones to your life. If you're looking for actionable advice on how to apply the principles of great flow and the other cornerstones to your own home, you might want to check out one of these design clinics. In each of these, I apply the master plan thinking process to an area of the house, modernizing your curb appeal while keeping mid-century style intact, creating outdoor rooms, patio decks, and porches that create livable outdoor space around your home, and adding on to your space, planning an addition in the right mid-century way that can both be as cost-effective as possible and also create the livable addition you need without going overboard, without creating too much space. Each of these design clinics is calculated to help you go through in 2 hours all of the thinking you might want to touch on before you call a contractor and before you take action on making changes to your house in 2026 and beyond. These cornerstones show up in every design I create for my one-to-one master plan clients. In my next video series, I'm going to be doing a set of case studies, walking through one project at a time, talking about the challenges that my clients faced, how they might apply to your house, and how you can apply ideas like the cornerstones to your home in a remodel. Just to give you a taste, I'm going to be talking about the tightest floor plan I have worked on yet, the smallest, snuggest house that we were still able to create some really excellent improvements in flow, a much better kitchen layout, for example, and also how to create more defined spaces within a house that was relatively generous scale to begin with and had a previous remodel blow out a lot of its interior spaces and everything in between. So stay tuned for that video series, but for now, maybe take a look around your house and see where you could potentially improve the connections and flow between the room you're sitting in right now and some other space you love.